And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on our platform, rapidly expanding across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism and freedom and liberty, and advancing candidates who espouse our values and your values. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for having us along for part of your day today. We are so grateful to you. We are so thankful for you. You are the very best listening family anybody could possibly hope for, and we are so blessed. We are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you're looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd also really appreciate it if you'd help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform it is you're listening to it. Please subscribe and share it. You can even just share short clips rather than full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels. And the links to those are, as always, in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Today, we are going to do an after-action report on the November runoffs. I know y'all have probably been waiting for us on that. And we had to run the numbers and everything and take a look at all the races. So anyway, we're thrilled to be sharing that with you today. And not just the November runoff, but the overall picture of the elections this cycle. We have so much to be proud of, so much to be grateful for, and you were a major, major part in that. So thank you so much for your engagement and for your activism, for doing your civic duty, and for getting plenty people out to vote. We know that you did play a huge part in that. So before we get into the after action report, let me read for us the scripture of the day. It is Psalm chapter 68, verses 3-7. And it says, "But let all the righteous be glad. Yes, let them all rejoice in your presence and be carried away with gladness. Let them laugh and be radiant with joy. Let them sing their celebration songs for the coming of the cloud rider whose name is Yah. To the fatherless, he is a father. To the widow, he is a champion friend. The lonely, he makes part of a family. The prisoners, he leads into prosperity until they sing for joy. He is our holy God in his holy place. But for the rebels, there is heartache and despair. O Lord, it was you who marched in front of your people, leading them through the wasteland." Pause in his presence. And to me, this is a psalm about the all-sufficiency of God and how he triumphs over every enemy. Regardless of the situation we find ourselves in, the Lord can be the one to meet our every need and to bring us through it in victory. This is a scripture that calls us to rejoice in the goodness of God because he is an ever-present help, because he does not leave us or forsake us, because he leads us to victory.
He is all sufficient. And, what struck me when you were reading the psalm was I'm so thankful that God does not keep a record of our wrongs and our shortcomings, because, in one of the psalms, David said, if you kept a record of our failings, who could stand before you? He is so compassionate and so faithful. And as you said, all sufficient. He can do all, even things that look like they're impossible to us. In fact, God seems to specialize in doing the impossible as long as we have the faith to be his instruments, which we do and pray for every day. And speaking of God's instruments, Danielle, there were some outstanding candidates that we've talked about on our show many times who elevated themselves to victory in these November runoffs. I'm talking about candidates who we were very high on, who will make the difference in the legislature. I don't think I could be any happier about how these elections came out. Did we win everything? No, but we won a lot, and certainly enough to solidify real conservative majorities in both chambers. Just thrilled to death about all the hard work that we did and the hard work that our listeners did and support we received. And I cannot wait to get into these races. Just fabulous.
It is just fabulous. I know you and I were talking just yesterday, Chris, trying to kind of walk through everything that we weighed in on. And we were just astounded by how not only how many wins, but how well the candidates did that we supported, the candidates who were really, really strong and who are going to make a difference for this state. So I couldn't be happier either. Let me, before we get into the candidates, why don't we talk through the amendments and kind of get that little piece out of the way, because I know you and I are going to want to go in depth on these races, and we'll just start with the amendments, Chris, and we can make
Yeah.
that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So there were four amendments that we voted on in this November election, and amendments number 1, 2, and 3 all passed. So
Yes.
would you just tell us what that means for us going forward?
Sure. Amendment 1, which we supported, simply makes it easier for the legislature to override a governor's veto of a bill without having a special session. For all kinds of reasons, that was a very good amendment, and it just increases legislative flexibility in overriding vetoes, saves money and time, very important, and it passed, fortunately. Amendment 2 also passed. That was really a no-brainer. That really just cleans out extant funds in the Constitution for funding that no longer exists, kind of like cleaning out rotten food in your refrigerator. It's over. It doesn't need to be there anymore. And thirdly, amendment number 3 was a property tax exemption. Now, this property tax exemption, it just allows local authorities to make a decision about whether they want to carve out a particular property exemption for first responders. And it passed. We were neutral on this amendment because we thought, on the one hand, they shouldn't be carving out special exceptions, special exemptions for certain classes of citizens. On the other hand, we thought it was good that they were returning the authority to local governing authorities, which is exactly what's going to happen because the amendment passed. So really, it probably a good thing that it passed to the extent that it returns authority to local governing officials. And then the last amendment, number 4, this amendment would have allowed the legislature to vote by a 2/3 majority to withdraw money out of what's called the Revenue Stabilization Trust Fund in order to stabilize deficits. We were for that amendment because we thought it would help to divert funding away from antiquated transportation projects that never get done, never get completed. But that amendment failed, and probably because most citizens in the final analysis just simply decided that maybe the legislature should be able to balance a budget by cutting in other areas without going into that trust fund. So anyway, 3 of the amendments that we supported passed, and then the fourth one failed.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if number 4 failed just because it said money's in it, and people are like, "No, you want you want to do something with monies?" No.
And it's because people are so jaded when it comes to the spending of our money. That may well have been the case, Danielle.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the races. We did a lot of endorsements this cycle between the October races and the November ones, including statewide office, House, Senate, Bessie Board. At the end of the day, we made 61 endorsements, and of all the races where we endorsed, our win rate at the end of it was 72%. So that is nothing to sneeze at. And I just can't thank the listeners enough because I know that they played a huge, huge part in that.
And they played a massive part in it by getting the word out, by supporting our ability to get the word out, to build our infrastructure in order to help these candidates. The thing that I find particularly remarkable about the 72% win rate that we had on these candidates is that, as all of our listeners know, we endorse based upon the quality of the candidate, not necessarily, at least at the outset, on whether or not they can win the race. And so based on that criteria and choosing candidates based strictly upon whether or not they are most likely to be faithful to the Constitution and faithful to the citizens, 72% of our endorsed candidates won. And I think that is absolutely remarkable and really a testament to our growing influence because of the support from citizens across Louisiana.
Absolutely, because this is a 100% multiplication process. The more people listen, the more they talk about the truth of what's really going on, the bigger the reach of the truth can get. And that's what this is really all about. So, Chris, let's get into the statewide office races. We'll start out with the Secretary of State races. As we mentioned before, we didn't really weigh in on this race, or we didn't really endorse in this race, but we did at the end of the day think that Nancy Landry was the preferable candidate of the two. She did beat Gwen Collins Greenup, the Democrat, at a rate of 67% of the vote to Gwen's 33% of the vote.
Yeah.
And I think there's some areas, Chris, it sounds like that she may be willing to work with us.
Yes, based on some conversations that we've had with legislators who we have a lot of respect for, she is open to discussing issues related to election fraud in Louisiana when it comes to ballot harvesting, absentee ballots, and that sort of thing to help clean up our system. I'm sure that she will be, at least at some point, open to cleaning up our dirty voter rolls. I know that several of the legislators that we've spoken to are very interested in taking legislative action to clean up our voter rolls. I think she'll be open to that. So while she was not the ideal candidate for us, as everybody knows, we supported Brandon Trosclair because of his position on the secure hand-marked paper ballots and doing away with these machines. Clearly on balance, in terms of her opponent, Glenn Collins Greenup, a Democrat, Nancy Landry was the preferable candidate, and I believe will take steps to maintain the integrity in our voting system, particularly if she has good, healthy pressure put on her by prominent members of the legislature, which we believe will happen.
Yeah, and I think it's something where she can see some early wins for herself too, right? There's nothing like getting into office and showing that you can make some really quick, sizable wins that maybe didn't take that much effort on your part, but show that you are going to move and get things done that are meaningful to the people. So I hope that's the tactic she takes. I hope that she's ready to hit the ground running and that she's working with good people.
Yes. Well, you mentioned in a pre-show that maybe there's a chance that she is more open to taking a close look at the vulnerabilities in these machines than she actually projected publicly during her campaign. And she may have more concerns actually about that than we realize. So anything can happen. Hope springs eternal. And I believe that people are always hopefully willing to listen and to be educated on certain issues.
Yep, absolutely. Now, moving to the Attorney General's race, Liz Murrill, who we were extremely strong on, beat her Democratic opponent, Lindsay Cheek, at 66% of the vote to Lindsay's 34% of the vote. And Liz was focused on crime. She got the endorsement of the Sheriff's Association. She has gone to the Supreme Court for us on censorship and personal liberties issues. She's a fighter, and I think she's going to come out, like a bullet out of a gun.
Yeah, she has been so unequivocal in her positions on things. Truly, obviously understands and appreciates the Constitution, and has expressed real concern about federal and state overreach into areas of fundamental liberty. And I think that she's going to be very aware and sensitive to any encroachment upon our rights by the government. And in this day and age, boy, do we need an attorney general like that? I say absolutely.
Yep. And you know what? I really appreciated what Diane Andrews said the other day, that she's not just the best candidate in the race, but she was the best candidate across the country. And I just love that. And I think that Liz is going to rise to the top as the best attorney general in the country.
I agree.
Now, moving on to treasurer, John Fleming beat Dustin Granger. We supported John Fleming. He got 65% of the vote to Dustin Granger, who's a Democrat, his 35% of the vote. And Chris, I think it's going to be a great thing that we are going to have a true fiscal conservative at the helm as a treasurer.
And fiscal conservative he is. He served a number of years in the U.S. Congress. He was one of the founding members of the Freedom Caucus in Washington, D.C., with Jim Jordan and others, and truly is a fiscal conservative. Was also served as a top advisor in the Trump administration. So really his conservative bona fides are unquestioned, running against a Democrat and won handily. And I believe that John Fleming will do a good job as state treasurer.
Awesome. Now, let's switch gears and look at the House. Of the 9 endorsements we made in the House during this runoff session, we saw 6 of them win. So that's a pretty great outcome. Let's start with House race or House District 18. We endorsed Tammy Fobb, and she ran against the party flipping incumbent Jeremy Lacombe. She did lose that race at 55 to 45%.
Yeah, she lost it. And, it's interesting when you look at the way that broke down. I mean, first of all, Jeremy Lacombe is a notorious leftist in the legislature. Even on things that shouldn't be controversial, he has notoriously voted against the values of his constituents. And we looked at this as a great opportunity to take him out. As you know, he challenged Caleb Klein-Peter back in November of 2022 for the state Senate seat down there. And Caleb Klein-Peter beat him handily simply by making sure that every voter in that district was aware of Lacombe's record. I don't know exactly what happened here. There certainly are some suggestions that there were some irregularities on the part of the Lacombe campaign, paying a lot of money for people to transport ballots and get people registered their ballots at the polls, and a lot of money. It's on his campaign finance report.
$20,000.
Yeah, and that was only in the last 10-day reporting. Prior to that, there was substantially more money spent. So he's out here paying people to pick up ballots from people and take them to the polls, and it just doesn't look good. It may be illegal, and it's not. It's just something that we've got to do something about.
Yeah, if it's not illegal yet, it needs to be.
It needs to be. And so, you have one parish where it looked like this really went down to, which is in Point Coupee, which is Jeremy Lacombe's home parish, where many of the votes, over half of the votes, were cast, and he beat Tammy Fobb, at least on paper, 2-1 down there. And one of the reasons why I'm a bit alarmed and suspicious by this is that he gets 64% of the vote in Point Coupee to her 36, yet a year ago, when he ran against Caleb Klein-Peter in the same parish, 47% of the people who voted in that parish voted against Jeremy Lacombe. So he goes from 52 or 53% up to 64. How that happens, I don't exactly know. People probably have different reasons for that, but that was why he won the race. Most of it happened in Point Coupee and a bit in Iberville Parish.
And if I recall, Chris, Tammy also is from Point Coupee. So it's not like he just won in his home district. They were fighting it out in Point Coupee. That was like ground zero, basically.
Yes, and you're exactly right. And with her being from there makes it even more suspicious, this margin of victory in Point Coupee. But it is what it is now. And suffice it to say that LeCag, the State of Freedom, and many others will have their eyes on Jeremy Lacombe, making sure that he is doing what he needs to do as a quote-unquote Republican in the legislature now.
Yes, quote unquote, indeed. All right, turning to District 53, we endorsed Dirk Guidry, and he lost to Jessica Domingue by less than 200 votes. This was the only real squeaker that we saw in our endorsements. She got 52% of the vote. He got 48% of the vote. And I'm going to be optimistic on this one, Chris, because we do know some very good people who endorse Jessica. So we hope that she will do a great job of representing the people of District 53, especially because I am one of the people of 53. I'd like great representation, and I hope that she'll be aligned with solid conservatives and vote as a solid conservative because her district is solidly conservative. So I'm hopeful about the outcome of this race and what it's going to mean for our district.
Yes, and this is a clean slate going in there. We're willing to presume in her favor, and we will trust but verify. And we will have our eyes on her and monitoring very closely what she's doing and the votes that she's making. And we're hopeful that we will be able to report to our listeners and to citizens across Louisiana that she's doing what she should be doing by the citizens of her district, District 53.
And there's certainly great people for her to partner with, and we're happy to be among those as well. So we will see how this shakes out. But, I don't have the crushing blow of this one that I did in the Tammy Fobb versus Jeremy Lacombe race, just for instance.
No. Well, hopefully there really isn't a record by which to compare Jessica Domain yet to Jeremy Lacombe, but we certainly have good reason to believe that she will be voting and acting to the right of Jeremy Lacombe. If she doesn't, then I can tell you that will spell trouble in any reelection campaign that she runs in.
Or anybody who would vote that way, obviously.
Not just her. Not just her.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, District 64 was a race with two fantastic candidates, Kelly Alford and Kelly Hennessy Dickerson. We endorsed Dickerson, and she won 60-40.
Yes, and we're very, very proud of her effort. Dickerson is a former school board member out in Livingston, did a very good job on the school board, very protective of parents' rights. And she was smeared in this campaign by an establishment, and she fought back against those smears, against those fallacious ethical challenges, and the voters rejected that effort to smear her and tear her down, and she won basically 2-1, 60-40, and I think she's the real deal, and I think she is going to add a lot to the conservative delegation in the House. She is going to be a fresh new face and bring a lot of enthusiasm to the legislature.
Yes, and hopefully it's not the last we see of Kelly Alford as well, because she was a fantastic candidate. This, we had mentioned before, this was a tough call for us to make. So I hope that Kelly will stay engaged, and we'll see more from her.
Very, very fine person, Kelly Alford, and really either one of these candidates, I think, would have done a very fine job. But Hennessy got on in there.
She did. Now, District 65, this was Brandon Ivy against Lauren Ventrella, and we endorsed Lauren. She beat him handily, 57. She got 57% of the vote to his 43% of the vote. And she came on here and she said she was tired of seeing Louisiana last, that she wants to partner with her constituents on the issues that matter to them. Insurance and flooding were on the top of her list, which resonates strongly with me as well. So I couldn't be more thrilled to see her not only get in, but to get in, very solidly.
Yes, and one of the most attractive things about Lauren Ventrella is the fact that she's a trained constitutional attorney. She understands the Constitution, and therefore she understands and can see very clearly when the government encroaches upon our rights, which is a big concern to our listeners and to Louisiana citizens, individual freedom and liberty. I love the fact that she has a constitutional background. She's going to bring a lot to the legislature insofar as making sure that our rights are protected. And also regarding this race, we were very careful when we endorsed Lauren not to conclude that Brandon Ivy, her former opponent, was a rhino and an establishment man just because his twin brother, Barry, was an establishment man in the legislature. But we did raise the specter of that association and expressed some concern about whether or not he was a true conservative. And for that reason, among others, I think Lauren winning in such a strong manner is going to be very, very good for the legislature.
Yes. And I don't know Brandon, but I have to say Lauren is so warm. She's so earnest. And it's very clear that, the Central and the area that she's from is just part of her heart, so that came across very loud and clear, and people can't just say no to that,
No.
She was a fantastic candidate.
She was a tremendous candidate, and really you could tell that her heart was in it for the right reason, and that she had prayed an awful lot before she even made the decision to run. She was clearly the better candidate in that race, and we got the word out very broadly for Lauren and assisted her on the last day of the campaign to make sure people knew who she was. So very gratified at her win.
Yes, and not dissimilar to Lauren is in District 66, Emily Chenevere. What a powerhouse. She was running against Richie Edmonds in this runoff, and we were enthusiastic supporters of Emily. She made a very, very strong showing at 60% of the vote to Richie Edmonds, 40% of the vote. So that, I mean, just goes to show she kept it positive. She kept it focused on the issues. She has a track record. She told us about her track record, and you can see it whenever you look into her, of family values, of education versus over indoctrination. And she has been working tirelessly to address the plague of sex trafficking in our state and in our country, and probably outside the bounds of our country. She's a founder. She's one of the founders of Mom for Liberty, Louisiana, along with Paige Lowry, who we'll be having on the show soon. So Emily is just going to be a force to be reckoned with in the House.
Clearly brings so much to the table. And as we established well before, and as you just said, she was doing things for the public good long before she ever made a decision to run for office. She is the real deal. And she did keep it 100% positive. And she had many opportunities to respond to some of the negativity that was being directed against her, particularly in the last days and weeks of the campaign. Never did, just continued to work hard, continued to maintain the moral high ground, despite the fact that, quite frankly, her opponent misrepresented information regarding whether or not Speaker Mike Johnson supported his campaign. We come to find out that Mike Johnson had not expressed his public support for his campaign. And so that was not true. The voters were made aware of that in the last days of the campaign, and that probably hurt the opponent. Also, the opponent's attacks on Hollis Day, who we had supported in the primary, I believe that backfired on him because those attacks were unfair and inaccurate. And then also specifically regarding Emily, the opponent said that Emily was not for the St. George Incorporation, which she was for and had expressed her support publicly for it. She just continued to try to clear the record, make sure that people understood the truth, and was very successful in making sure people understood what the real truth was. The last thing that I really think influenced this, and I think may have been the overarching concern in the campaign, was that Louisianans historically, Danielle, do not like the idea of too much power being concentrated in one family. As you know, we endorsed and supported Richie Edmonds' father, Rick Edmonds, in his successful run against Barry Ivy for the state Senate. But Richie appeared to be in this runoff running very much on his dad's coattails. And I think that people don't like the idea of having that kind of power concentrated in one family. And I think that probably hurt him, especially when he wed himself so closely to his father, to the point where both of their signs were in all the yards. His dad was going to people's homes to campaign for his son. It's just a little bit too close.
Well, and at the end of the day, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head even before this. People don't like a liar. You know, if you're not telling the truth about who endorses you, if you're not telling the truth about your opponent, it stinks and it catches up with you. And if you're not telling the truth, you are a liar. It's a pretty binary thing. So, I mean, he got found out and he lost. People responded with their votes. So I hope he can take a good lesson from that. I hope that he, really takes a long, hard look at what he was doing and whether he was doing it for the right reasons. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but maybe he just got too emotionally involved in this and couldn't overcome that. I don't know, but we wish him the best. I hope that he can mend some of the fences that he has torn down over the last couple of weeks.
Well said. Well said. You know, it's one of those deals where this is a race that is a real vindication that it is possible to have a strong message, to stay positive, and to be relentless in your efforts and to win without going down into the mud.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on to a race that is very near and dear to your heart, Chris. This is District 68, your district. The Democrat Belinda Creel Davis went up against Dixon McMakin, who we endorsed. Dixon beat her, getting 57% of the vote to her 43% of the vote. And some of the things we liked about Dixon were the fact that he is very hot on addressing insurance, addressing infrastructure. He wants to see efficiency in governance, and perhaps most importantly to me, accountability to the voters.
Yes, and spoke very strongly about our traffic issues, the transportation issues, holding DOTD accountable for wanting to close interstate down one lane in each direction. He thinks, Dixon, that is just going to be a nightmare if it's not addressed and addressed very directly. I think he's the person who's going to be able to do that. And of course, his opponent is a die-in-the-wool Democrat. And one of the most exciting things about the outcome of this race and the fact that it's over is the fact that I'm not going to be the happy recipient of any more of Belinda Davis's mailers. I was a little grieving over that for a couple of hours when the race ended, but I got over it, and I will not be getting any more of Belinda Davis's mailers, at least not until the next election cycle. But Dixon McMakin clearly is the preferable candidate. I think he's going to do a great job and hopefully get in there and help us out quickly with some of these imminent transportation calamities that are coming our way.
Indeed. Now on to District 70. This was a long shot race where we endorsed the conservative Democrat Steve Myers over the terrible, atrocious Barbara Freiberg, who votes against the interests of her voter base nearly every time she gets near a button where she has the opportunity to do so. And she, unfortunately, whipped him, getting 65% of the vote to his 35% of the vote. We knew it was a long shot, but I mean, there you have it.
Yeah. Well, Steve Myers is a conservative Democrat. Unfortunately, was not able to get that message out sufficiently to the Republicans in the district. You're fighting an uphill battle in a largely Republican district when you have a D by your name and Republicans go vote. And so not entirely surprising, this outcome. Unfortunate because Barbara Freiberg is such a rhino. But you know what? There will be other elections, and we will continue to keep our eyes on Miss Barbara Freiberg and do all that we can to hold her fully accountable.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how the conservative makeup of this legislature really and having the backing of a conservative governor really pushes some of these people who have been voting poorly, to say it, antagonistically to our values. They're really going to have a fight for survival if they try that nonsense going forward.
That's such a great point, Danielle. With the new makeup, particularly as we'll talk about with the new makeup in the state Senate, because of the successful results we've had, some of these rhinos, particularly Freiberg, I think are going to be largely neutralized. She may be present, but she may have very, very little influence. And as you said, she may be proverbially run out on a rail if she tries to do certain things that she did before because of the new makeup and the new governor.
And I'm so thankful for that. I really can't wait to see that. Now, shifting gears to House District 90, the terrible incumbent Mary Dubuisson, who listeners will remember was the one who tried to bring casino gambling to her district. She also completely out of literal left field tried to bring an abortion law that would make abortion legal in Louisiana. And Chris, you can correct my language on that, but certainly would have weakened our pro-life laws. She was challenged by Brian Glorioso because of these two issues in particular, I believe, and he beat her in a very strong showing. He got 57% of the vote. She got 43%, and I mean, she was an incumbent, so that's pretty remarkable. Brian came on the show. He talked about the importance of economic reform, the importance of simplifying the tax structure and making Louisiana competitive and getting the government out of the way of private enterprise. So I am thrilled to have such a business-minded, matter-of-fact guy replacing Mary Dubuisson.
an unapologetic Reagan conservative, and even alluded to Trump's campaign slogan, "Make Louisiana Great." That was part of Brian Glorioso's campaign strategy. Yes, he just he poured it on, and what wasn't even close, despite the fact that Casino Mary had the endorsement of the local sheriff, and I think much of the establishment behind her. Brian Glorioso just ran a very compelling, effective campaign. You remember one of the things I remember Brian saying on the show, Danielle, was it's time to stop voting for people because they knew your mother in school or you were friends with their sister.
That's right. What are they doing for you in Baton Rouge? That's exactly right.
What are they doing for you in Baton Rouge? Are they being faithful to their commitments and their promises? And that message really resonated. I'm so happy for Brian that he won, not only because he's such a good person and good candidate, but because his opponent was really, really atrocious and needed to be retired.
Yep. I'm thrilled for that one. I hope we don't see too much of her darkening the doors of the legislature.
I have a feeling, based upon her history and track record, she may be darkening the door of some casinos, though.
Perhaps. Okay, now District 103. This is Mike Bayham, who ran against Richie Lewis, and he trounced him. Bayham got 62% of the vote to Richie's 38% of the vote, and Mike Bayham is a constitutionalist. He's for personal liberties, he's for small government, and pushing back the reach of government's long arms into our lives. That really impressed me about Mike.
Impressed me very much. Another thing that impressed me greatly when he was on the show was the fact that he is a very, very unapologetic and devout Christian, bases everything that he says and does on his deep faith in Christ. You recall that his motivating scripture that he alludes to and recalls often is, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to lose his soul? It's very rare for a political figure or politician to have that as his fundamental scripture that he lives by. And I thought that was so powerful when he mentioned that. Also, his love for St. Thomas More, the great English martyr. I think that he is a man of deep faith and principle, and I think he will do a wonderful job in the legislature. And as you said, Danielle, he did talk about the Constitution when he was on the show, and how much he disliked and disdains the kind of federal overreach that we saw and state overreach that we saw during the COVID pandemic. He will be on the lookout for things like that.
Yep. And he'll also, Chris, I believe, look for ways to return our state to founding principles, which is something that's so huge and something we need to see a huge shift back to for our entire nation. So if Mike will be pushing on that, I'm thrilled to have him.
I'm so excited to see how he does and where he goes, but he will be a great addition.
Yep. Now, just to kind of round things up here, in the October election, we had 11 of our House endorsements win. We had 11 of our House endorsements lose, and we had 5 that went to runoffs. So 16 out of 27 of our House endorsements won or advanced to the runoffs in October. And then in November, 6 out of our 9 endorsements won in the House. So where we're going to end up here is that the House will have 73 Republicans, 32 Democrats. So we got 2 additional seats because the 2019 class, there were 71 Republicans, 33 Democrats, and 1 independent who voted with the Democrats.
Yes, we have gained in both chambers, net 2 in the House and net 1 in the Senate. And it's important to remember, Danielle, that not only are we gaining in numbers, but the quality of the candidates who won. You couldn't ask for any better. And really, when you looking at the Senate, when you say, okay, so we only gained 1 net in the Senate, But look, the reason why that's a little bit of a misnomer is that look at Blake Miguez. Blake Miguez was simply running to replace a retiring, quote, Republican. But the Republican that he replaced was a notorious
Stinky
rhino.
Fred Mills, yeah,
Stinky Fred Mills, and Blake Miguez is a true constitutional conservative. So he is going to do a wonderful job. He's going to be very powerful in the state Senate, helping to change the climate over there.
Yes, and let me get into the numbers in the Senate, because in the October election, we had 9 wins and 4 losses with our endorsements in the Senate. And then in this November race, we didn't make any endorsements. There were only 2 runoff races. One was between 2 Democrats, one was between 2 Republicans. So with those, as you said, Chris, we'll have 28 Republicans and 11 Democrats. So yes, we did gain 1 seat, but the quality of the candidates will far, far outstrip last legislature's Senate cohort.
No question about it. I mean, you're talking about Alan Seabaugh, Valerie Hodges, Blake Miguez, folks like that, real tried and true conservatives. They're going to make a difference. Stuart Cathy returning is going to do a wonderful job as well. I think that we are in a position now to really, really change things in our state. All they have to do is their job, and we'll get it done. But I want to mention this, just so our listeners can really understand what they've done, what they've accomplished through their support of the State of Freedom and the support of LeCag. In October, in all races, 65% of the candidates that we endorsed either went to a runoff or won outright in October. And in November, Danielle, this is a staggering figure. In November, 75% of our candidates won. 75%. And if you average them together between October and November in all races, 72% of our endorsed candidates have won. That is a hugely significant and very impressive number, and is a testament to a lot of hard work and prayer across the state, and certainly a lot of hard work and support from our listeners.
Absolutely, especially considering, I know you gave the percentages, Chris, but we endorsed, I can't remember if I said this at the top of the show, we endorsed in 61 races between all of those different classifications, statewide office, House districts, Senate districts, and the Bessie board, which we'll get into the Bessie board when we have Paige Lowry on in probably in a week or so. And so I'm blown away by the favor of God on this. I'm blown away by the support that great candidates have gotten. They deserved it, and I couldn't be more proud.
I'm very, very proud that we were able to help so many of these candidates get the word out about them to voters. And it's just a blessing to have had the opportunity to play a part in it. One of the other reasons why I'm very impressed with the 72% total endorsement percentage that we have is that, as our listeners know, Danielle, we don't make endorsement decisions here based on a calculus about which Republican in a race can win. We make our endorsement decision based upon which candidate is going to most faithfully represent their constituents, the citizens of Louisiana, and the Constitution, using that as our criteria. And even then, we were able to pull off some major, major wins and end up with a very high winning percentage. I'm very, very proud of it, and quite frankly, very humbled by it.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't say it better. And also maybe just a point for people to keep in mind that not all candidates are created equal, right? Not everybody works as hard. Not everybody's as well spoken. Not everybody has the backing of strong financial backers. So this is a very uneven playing field. When people are running for office, it is not a level playing field. And so to see this number of wins, to see that such great constitutional conservatives, most of whom are strong believers, win is just, I think it just means great things for our state.
It means great things for our state, and it is a reflection in significant part of our broadening platform, of the fact that all you really need to be able to win is have good, solid candidates with courage and give them a good, solid platform to get their message out and their vision out, and also have a good platform to expose the records and the vulnerabilities of their opponents. And that's what we're providing both through the State of Freedom, expanding across the state, and LeCAG. And again, to our supporters and our listeners, it's just don't really have the words to express how gratified and deeply thankful we are for all of the support.
Yes. And in order to keep supporting LeCAG and the work that we're doing, you can go to lecag.org. You can tell that, the hard work that we and Katie and many, many others have put in over the last several months, which feels like decades, has really paid off. And our partners are very, very much a part of that. As we've said, not only a part of it, but crucial to that. So, Chris, how can people support LeCAG?
Checks can be sent to P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, payable to LeCAG, LACAG. I didn't say it, zip code 70896. And you can also become members online at www.lacag.org. And we are deeply, deeply thankful.
Yeah, and amassing an army. So come be part of it.
Indeed, we are.
And also to support the State of Freedom and to keep this program going, we would love your support. You can do that over at freedomstate.us. Every dollar helps us make this sustainable. And you can also send checks to P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana, 70343. And lastly, I'd like to share an opportunity for any listener who may already be investing in precious metals, may be interested in investing in precious metals, or even starting a home-based business in that industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, which is actual dealer cost. So you can refer people to Metal Stacks as well for an additional income. So if you're just interested in purchasing metals, you can visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. That helps me out. I'll get the commission. And then Metal Stacks retail prices, just so you know, are extremely competitive. They're beating the big sites, and they have no credit card fees and no minimums. And if you're interested in learning more about the business aspect of it, email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us.
What a tremendous opportunity Metal Stacks is. I am absolutely thrilled about the outcome of these elections, all of the hard work. It is a testament to the fact that we here at the State of Freedom are elevating the cause of constitutional freedom across the state and revolutionizing the way political advocacy is done in Louisiana simply by providing an uncensored platform for conservatives with real vision and real courage to express their views for our state. And these results are a testament to that, and a testament to the fact that with support, with organization of LeCAG and other advocacy groups in Louisiana, it is possible for good conservative candidates to win. It is possible to beat the old establishment, and we have seen it in multiple races this cycle, and I could not be happier about it. And as we continue to go forward each day, expanding, Danielle, with these candidates, we are going to continue to take steps to preserve the state of freedom in Louisiana.
Amen. Here we go.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to the State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana, 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.